Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Erica Sense, Website Marketing Manager Lead at WP Engine, and I'll be your moderator for today's panel. Thank you all for joining us for this important discussion on AI's impact on SEO. Search has always been an evolving landscape, but with AI rapidly changing how content is discovered, indexed, and surfaced, many marketers and SEO professionals are asking, did AI just eat my search traffic? Today, we're going to explore that question, diving into how AI is reshaping organic search, the risks of AI-generated summaries repurposing content, and what we can do to adapt. We'll discuss strategies to ensure your brand remains visible, how to optimize for AI-driven search results, and what the future of organic traffic looks like in this new era. To help us navigate these challenges, we have an incredible panel of experts, each bringing deep expertise in SEO, analytics, and digital strategy. I'll introduce them by name, and then I'll ask each of them to briefly introduce themselves, who they are, and what side of SEO they're on. First up, we have Miranda Garman, VP of Organic Performance at Monster. Next up is James Gibbons, Senior SEO Success Manager at Quarter. Jack Minot, Organic Search Director at MediaWorks. And finally, Lee Izensi, Senior Director of Analytics at AdSwerve. Thank you all for being here today. Let's start with introductions. Miranda, can you kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Miranda. I've been working for the past 17 years in SEO, mainly working on the content and technical side. And I'm currently working at Monster as a VP Organic Performance.
I'm James. I work for Quarter. We're a technology company working in the search space. I've been working in SEO in a number of different roles, agency and in-house functions, but now building technology to navigate this era of LLM search and whatnot. So excited to be here.
So I'm Jack Minot, the Organic Search Director at MediaWorks. We are a full-service digital agency based out of the Northeast, Newcastle in the UK. My experience with SEO is just over a decade, focusing on content, strategy, and technical.
And I'm Lee Izensi, Senior Director of Analytics at AdSwerve. We're an award-winning data, media, and tech consultancy and a leading Google Adobe partner that helps over 800 brands and agencies unlock their new growth opportunities and get the most ROI out of their digital marketing. I personally have been in the industry for over 20 years, helping clients grow their digital marketing strategies and helping with technologies like AI.
Thank you all so much for being here with me today. I want to start out today with some inspiration we got for this panel from a blog post by travel blogger Amanda Williams, who recently shared concerns about how AI-driven search features are impacting her site's traffic. She's seen a sharp drop in organic visits and draws a correlation between Google's AI-generated overview and the decline. She points out that queries like, what's the best time of year to visit Scotland, used to drive traffic to blogs like hers. But now, Google aggregates that information and answers it directly, bypassing independent creators. For starters, panelists, do you think this is a legitimate concern? And if so, for those whose livelihoods depend on organic search, how would you recommend they adapt?
I'll take this. Yeah, it's a real threat. We're seeing changes happening literally every day in this environment. I know the March update of Google around March 13th saw a dramatic increase in the amount of AI overviews seen in Google, which we're picking up. And, we've seen this before. The travel case was mentioned. I used to work at Skyscanner, and when Google Flights first came, that was a direct impact into, travel search. So yes, we're seeing it. I think brands need to think about, being cited and getting visibility in AI overviews. And that can come from, content beyond, what we thought of as SEO content. Maybe it needs to be even more niche and more kind of asset focused versus pure informational, and making sure that it is discoverable by search engines and other bots. So it's showcased on your site. But yes, it is in this new environment. And I think just one of the main themes I've been seeing or hearing about is that while traffic may be going down, in some segments, leads may be going up because more targeted content can be brought in.
Yeah, and from an analytics perspective, we're seeing more AI crawling than ever before. We're seeing clients having to clustered their refer information more specifically around AI, specifically ChatGPT, Google, where we're seeing clients having to take a more proactive approach to the quality of content that they're building as well, focusing more on what can be indexed rather than just getting the information out there that a typical human user would want to consume.
And maybe to build on that, so one thing is, well, if we're working with limited budget for content creation, it's also good to check, like, how do we make sure that the content that we create is actually driving conversions on leads? So in terms of, are we focused on inspirational content or informational queries, or more towards like product-related keywords? So if somebody searching for certain products, that they actually have more likelihood of, instead of just being cited, that they actually click through the website. So I think it's also with limited budget, it's good to check like what kind of content do I want to invest in? Where do I still have a chance to come up? And what will actually, or have more chance of driving traffic to the site?
Awesome. Jack, anything to add there?
Yeah, so I was just going to really build on James's point there about at the end where he was saying about conversional traffic. And actually, in some cases, we're seeing those conversions go up. That's definitely something we're seeing across our client base as well, is that although, impressions are increasing and click-through rates are going down, the quality of traffic in some cases is better and actually driving further conversion. But there is always that challenge of, because informational traffic has dropped out and actually that traffic is typically less conversional, higher in the funnel, essentially looking for certain things. Yeah, you are just getting those customers that are landing in more transactional kind of pages, whether it be product, category, that kind of thing.
And I think also we're now talking about AI overviews, but Google is also testing AI mode, which is even like when people come in that experience, it's even less the common result. It's basically if people are in that experience, it's like you don't see the traditional results anymore. So either you need to be cited as a source, or you have even less visibility if Google starts rolling out that AI mode more prominently.
So I think, what this really means for website owners and brands that you want to continue to have this traffic and get visibility is to really, before maybe SEO was literally seen as just a pure black box. Google has the algorithm, we can't do anything about it. But now with AI overviews, it's actually forcing the industry to learn the mechanisms of how Google parses out content from a text and determines that it is relevant to a given query. So technologies like the vector embeddings, cosine similarity scoring, this kind of semantic method of information retrieval. Now brands can actually use this to measure and see if their content is even relevant for these queries. So we can see if you are cited in a AI overview, what was your text that was used for the citation, scoring that against the query. But then you can also measure what was the final text Google displayed in the AI overview that may have been a modification of your original text. If so, what was that modification? So these are steps that brands can take to begin to actually get an understanding and to actually see if they are even eligible to play in the space because they have the content or they don't.
Awesome. That was great, everybody. Thank you so much for the contribution to that question. I would like to shift our focus a little bit now to search volume. So Google says that search volume has continued to increase, even growing by over 20% since ChatGPT launched. And this was specifically according to an analysis by Barclays. Given this data, do you feel AI search will be a complement to traditional search, or do you think it'll be a long-term disruption that will eventually shift user behavior away from traditional search engines?
I think it will shift away from traditional search. Normally, people were using shorter keywords. Now it's actually people getting used to more conversational searches. So that's also by doing so, that we actually need to optimize for more long tail keywords, because that's also how users are more likely searching in the future. So I think it's a more fundamental shift from short tail to long tail, and in terms of more of a conversational shift.
Yeah, I think Miranda brings up a great point about the conversational component of AI. As we went from keyword-based search into conversational with AI, we're going to see the way that people find information similar to having a conversation with another person. As you go out with your friends and family members, you ask about things, you're going to get that information in a plain text way, bringing up topics, bringing up new ideas, just like you would by searching the internet, finding new topics. So while you might not get the perfect bit of information, you'll get a starting point on how to get the information that you're looking for that may drive you to a particular site. But that quick reference that would come from a conversation is key.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely, we don't know the full extent of how these search patterns are going to be changed. I do think there will always still be, Google search, certain things people are going to want to get a quick result, a sports game, for example. So we need to see, what are the boundaries of that? But also, there is kind of using the LLMs and searching in there and then doing Google searches as a function of what you're finding. So if brands are somehow cited in ChatGPT, Perplexity, and referenced somehow that they have something of value for that searcher, that person may go ahead and do a brand search right in Google from what they're seeing. So kind of measuring this full kind of ecosystem with all the referral traffic we can, and those types of URLs getting referral traffic. How does, more of that happening? Is that correlating with regression, analysis of more direct traffic, things of that nature?
Awesome. Now let's shift our discussion to a topic that is gaining significant attention. We've been hearing a lot about AI agents lately, these personalized digital assistants that interact with users, conduct research, curate content, and even anticipate needs. Consider what this means. Instead of users searching and browsing websites themselves, these AI-driven tools deliver results directly, potentially reducing the need for traditional search interactions altogether. What makes this particularly challenging for content creators is that surfacing in AI-generated responses currently feels like a black box. The pathway for getting your specific information included in AI summaries remains unclear for many of these emerging tools. So here's what I'd like to explore with you all today. Given we're now in the year 2025, how should companies strategically approach content optimization for AI-generated responses? Is it time to fundamentally restructure content to improve visibility in AI search results? Or is the landscape still too uncertain to warrant changes that significant to our current SEO strategies?
So just, where should brands start getting visible in AI overviews? I think it really looks at, number one, what is your top SEO content currently driving traffic? Because that's, it's a lot easier to expand on where you already have clicks, visibility versus net new areas. So are you already ranking in AI overviews? What are they? There's ways to go about finding that. And then I think, one place to start is literally, pulling some of your keywords and even just adding those into ChatGPT and seeing what comes back, which includes brand keywords. So you could even start with kind of more the branded content, doing searches for what are alternatives to XYZ, what's coming up there, or pick kind of your main product spaces and, searching for what is the best XYZ, who's coming in on that list, what is being mentioned around that company mention. So kind of starting to do that, now you're getting kind of clues of what's coming back, and then just manually going and doing some of these searches that you're seeing, drilling down to these citations. Oh, this is on a 2,000 plus word blog, but one of these subsections is being housed in this. Have you written that multiple 2,000 word pieces for visibility in these systems? So it takes kind of iterating on that. where you can then measure granularity. Hey, we're covering all these topics in this space. And instead of having one main landing page, one main SEO asset, now, I'm recommending to clients certain areas you need to have a cluster of content in an area covering all aspects of it, because we don't really know how it's going to manifest in the final, calculation from Google, because these AI overviews are literally changing every day. So you have to do maybe a little bit more of a strategic spray and pray methodology of deploying content. But now, at least with technology like Quarter, you can simulate how Google is scoring your content with the vector embeddings, cosine similarity, before it's even live. So you can actually understand that, yes, bots are going to find this advantageous for that topic. So let's kind of continue and deploy that, rather than just deploying content we think it may rank, but we actually have no mathematical foundation that it could rank.
So, James, would you say, yes, time to restructure, but strategically restructure?
Yes. And really understand, what have you been producing in the past? Has it even been enough? Do you have to do more content, but not in perpetuity? All these, I recommend, every month, every quarter is a content experiment, especially in this day and age. So, okay, we're going to do 100 articles this quarter, this month, in a certain way. Well, let's figure out what worked with that the following month, the following quarter, and iterate accordingly.
And in terms of basically that measurement, so we were also testing in terms of queries or questions that are important to us, and then basically have the ChatGPT API connected with Google Sheet to get an indication for queries that our audience is likely to use. How often are we coming up? How often is our brand being mentioned? So to also give an impression how well are we currently there, because the training data used for ChatGPT is basically inputted by content which is already out there on the web. So that's also very interesting insight, how well are we represented in the current results. It's good to note that when you use the API from ChatGPT, it basically only gets information from that trained data, which is until October 2023, if I recall correctly. Whereas if somebody is using ChatGPT directly, there's also, if the trained data doesn't have enough information, it will go out to the web to get fresh data. So that part, unfortunately, they don't have it in the API yet. But basically, to James' point, make sure that it's visible, that you get an insight how well are we currently there, whether it's in AI overviews different way, or in ChatGPT. And that will help with also part of this strategy.
Awesome. So Miranda, fundamentally restructure, or it depends on where you're at so far? If you're doing well, it seems like the answer is keep going. But if not, then it's time to bring this technology into action.
Yeah, and I think it's also what were the guidelines or the structure, basically what you currently had in place. Are you already ranking well in SEO and also in AI overviews? So I think that's very important. And also making sure that it's directly clear from the beginning, from the headline, first introduction, for who is this article and what will be basically answering in this article. So sometimes when fluffy marketing language is being used, that is not very helpful for AI models to get a good understanding where the content is about. So I think it's also addressing for who the article is and make sure what you're going to talk about.
So then building on this, so what's already been said, it's about, answering more questions. I think that's where we're seeing some great wins. And starting with that brand element. So again, if people are asking about different product types, warranties, prices, just general usability guides and manual information, bringing that out into on-page content is extremely valuable when you are seeing kind of AI overviews for extremely niche but really relevant questions. Another thing that we're again looking at is kind of structured data. I appreciate, schema, structured data has been around for a long time now. Has definitely had its time in the sun with things like FAQ schemas, how-to, that kind of thing. But again, that kind of thing isn't going away. And again, it's something we can add in just to add even more kind of disambiguation to articles, to content we're creating, and really align it with what we want it to be about. And then I think it is even, it's an oldie but goldie, as they say. It is about citations and backlinks. And actually, LLMs are still going to need that kind of verification layer, or data layer in how they're processing data. So actually, again, if we can get our articles, our content posted in other places, referencing us as being the best source, and that's only going to help our own kind of validation, credibility in that aspect as well.
Does that mean backlinking is still going to be key? I haven't seen any indication of backlinking with AI to be as impactful as traditional search.
Yeah, I definitely think it will be a factor, but also internal linking, which is in the direct control of brands. Just because when LLMs are crawling, and Google is the best crawler hands down. But when other LLMs are crawling, they need to find these signals that this is worth crawling. This is worth crawling again. And yes, external backlinks can fast track that, but internal links can really do that. So, for example, if you have all this blog resource content buried deep in your page 3 of your blog section, it's not going to probably have the best internal linking. Or best visibility in LLMs, because it's hard for the LLMs to even find it in the first place. So the more that brands are showcasing all of their content on their top pages with internal linking, and then external citations just increase that whole phenomena as well.
And I think in terms of backlinks, or basically, it's not necessarily about the backlink, but making sure that your brand is being mentioned at other websites like best job boards in the industry, or or similar pages. Because when we analyze the ChatGPT results, often those even smaller websites are also being used as a source, as a citation. So just from a marketing perspective, that we basically are included into ChatGPT answers or in other overviews as well. It's important, or it's at least try to be in those overviews.
I would like to dive deeper now with some targeted questions for each of our panelists. So Lee, I'm going to start with you. With AI changing how search engines surface and deliver content, how should businesses be adjusting their approach to analytics and measurement? Are there new or different metrics that they should be paying more attention to now, or keep doing what you're doing?
For the most part, you can keep doing what you're doing. But as I mentioned at the top, it is key to start grouping together your refer information, start putting together the fact that ChatGPT, Gemini, other AI solutions are going to be crawling your site just like traditional crawlers were going to crawl your site. So getting those together, understanding where your crawlers, where your bots are coming from. You're going to see a whole bunch of new ones that you hadn't seen before, and understanding and getting a grasp onto those so that they're not augmenting your real human traffic in comparison to what the bots and other AIs are doing. So you're going to need to be a little more aggressive in how you denote the AI traffic. You may want to carve it out into its own, property if you're using GA4. But other than that, you're still going to want to understand traditional conversions. You're going to have a traditional funnel for anything like, what's happening on your site. But for the most part, focus on what you've been doing. Just understand you're going to have new traffic from AI that's going to crawl.
Awesome. And I'm actually, Miranda, this is something that I think you can really help us out with. For larger organizations that are security oriented, if they're concerned about making sure their content appears in AI results, how can they check and ensure that they aren't inadvertently blocking that AI bot traffic?
Yeah. So when bots are hitting servers, it costs there's an extra load on the server, so that it costs extra money for the organization. So what especially enterprise companies tend to do is basically block any bot traffic unless they approved it. So with new AI platforms and tools coming out, there's the risk that basically you're blocking ChatGPT or you're blocking Perplexity or Claude. So one thing how you can check that is if you have access to the log files, hopefully like a log file analyzer tool or something that can analyze it. Basically check for the user agents of those tools and to see like, are they getting like a 200 status code or are they being blocked? Like, do they get like a 403 that they're not allowed to crawl the website? If they are not allowed to crawl, then it also means that they cannot see the content on your pages. And then you have a large risk of not being included into the results. So basically to check the log files, if that's accessible to you, and see if bots are able to access it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. James, I'm going to pass it over to you. Quarters sits right at the intersection of AI and SEO, helping brands optimize their content for search. From what you're seeing on the front lines, how should companies rethink their content strategies to account for these new AI-driven search experiences?
Yeah, so definitely, rethink. It's a great time to rethink, and it's important to get all the data assembled. For example, if you haven't been using Google Search Console, now is the time to get and there's ways to use Google Search Console way more than going into the Google Search Console UI and downloading 1,000 rows at a time. You can mine, every single query Google can show you, and even the anonymized queries through kind of some of the additional exports. So now you've assembled every single keyword organically the brand has appeared for. Let's also connect that to Google Ads data to figure out any keyword that drove a conversion. Let's also connect the Google Analytics or Adobe or Clickstream data to find any conversion pages organically, and then also cross-reference the clicks that drove to that page. So now we've kind of begun to bucket our keyword universe in terms of direct conversion keywords that are related to conversions because they map to a conversion space, and then non-conversion keywords. And then you can bucket those out further in terms of kind of clustering them into different search intents, which may relate to product areas or other just content areas. And now you can get kind of a sense of, where is the actual demand, or where, what is declining or increasing. And then, getting that testing system kind of up and running. So I think one of the worst things brands can do is just kind of freeze and overthink everything. It's important to get that data and start executing against a strategy. But every month, every quarter, we also need to actually analyze and understand, okay, we launched 10 articles. What was the date that it got an impression in Google the first time? What was the date of the first click in Google? And now with AI and technology, we can get all these records very easily to understand the whole life cycle of content. So it's just getting that kind of pace or that type of system in place, and then kind of what is working just becomes a lot clearer and aligned with the other channels.
So, James, I appreciate the shout out for the need for that type of analysis and that type of work. Our clients on the more sophisticated side are bringing those different systems together. And we're seeing differences between the platforms. So things like Search Console and GA not matching perfectly, but giving you enough information to infer what is important and what type of content and what type of keywords and what type of material you should be putting out there and how to measure it across all those different sectors.
Awesome. Thanks, Lee. James, as a follow-up, what role do you see AI-generated insights and automation playing in an SEO strategy today? And are there specific ways that AI is already helping businesses stay competitive in organic search?
Yeah, it's just, and the whole kind of agents ecosystem is evolving for this specifically, separate from the consumer side and for the business side as well, having tools. and technology. So, these insights can just explain trends on a daily basis, on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. Where has the greatest magnitude of change happened in terms of clicks, in terms of impressions, at kind of the site section level, the keyword grouping level, and then in those top level areas, well, which pages contributed, which keywords contributed for those pages. So now kind of brands that can build a data lake, and there's a lot of technologies and companies doing that, like with Quarter, being able to join all these data sets for you in a structure that you can actually consume the insights from how AI can explain these trends. And then kind of beyond just insights and consuming that, it's like, let's actually deploy some of these AI things in kind of an applied sense. One of that is the internal linking, to be able to kind of crawl your entire corpus of URLs that exist from Google Search Console and all those keywords. And okay, which pages make the most sense to connect to each other? Well, that's a good job for an agent, an AI agent, to kind of mine and parse and build these connections that, yes, humans could have done that type of task manually. But when you have, hundreds of thousands, millions of URLs, it's just impossible. So internal linking is one area where it's really, an agent is building these connections for a module. The insights, like I mentioned, and then there's other kind of things that you kind of can chip away at. For example, metadata. So, okay, every week, what are my pages that are declining? Well, let's have an agent detect when was the last time there was a metadata update, and let's get a fresh batch of keywords and examples of what's already ranking on page 1 for that URL, and get a couple variations ready to go. And then we can review that full output and approve these changes if they have passed some type of audit process. So those are a couple of things that are kind of already working.
Awesome. It sounds definitely like it's the efficiency of doing it, and just how much more quickly you can get your content strategy formed by utilizing AI to your advantage. Awesome. Before we close out, Jack, I have something I'd like to get your perspective on that seems really fundamentally shifting, which is search visibility. How do you define search visibility now in this evolving environment that we're in?
It's definitely a challenge. I think visibility is shifting, with AI views, can be seen almost as an evolution or as an extension of something like a featured snippet, which we already know erodes away click-through rate and keeps users on search. I think it's just important to kind of measure though that AIOs especially, it may seem very basic or fundamental, but it actually requires 2 clicks for a user to actually interact and leave SERP. So that is one to actually drop down the result, and then the second to find the source or citation. And that's clicking on the right-hand kind of side. Even if someone clicks on the source itself, it can be 3 clicks. So it really does begin to shift us towards a more kind of brand impression model, especially for AIOs, in terms of, people are going to see the brand, but what does that mean? Like we said, visibility used to mean an indication of potential traffic and actually, expected clicks potentially. Whereas now it is more around that brand kind of penetration in search and actually how that might affect users and knock-on effect. So for example, things like brand searches may increase. We may see more actual direct traffic because of users actually understanding brand, understanding the domain and visiting directly. And also even it's that thing of, display advertising in terms of how we measure that, in terms of impressions, even on the Google Ads platform. And then kind of lastly is, we don't have any information, although we understand from last September, Google said that Search Console will be tracking impressions through Google Search Console. Obviously, there's no reports or no kind of first party data that we can get out of that platform to actually start measuring that, at least, right now. So it's a challenge, but I think there's definitely a few different things on the table, and it's just really for us as an industry to really understand and come up with a new way of measuring what this means for SEO and performance, really.
Awesome. So I know we talked about backlinks a minute ago, and we've all gotten into our feelings about them. But Jack, are there any other traditional ranking signals that also matter as much? And how should SEOs be prioritizing their efforts moving forward? Is it backlinks, or is there something else that we should also be keeping in mind?
So I think it's really just as what we've discussed, to be honest, in terms of, I think the fundamentals of SEO haven't changed. And I think whether it's creating quality content, as we discussed around the kind of technical elements, and ensuring, internal linking is strong, whether that's from a crawlability perspective or a discoverability perspective, both bots and users, it all remains. We haven't really touched on EEAT, but again, authorship, content policies, that will all be playing a part. And again, it's all built into that authority piece of, can this content be trusted? Is it, worthy enough to be cited in an overview or even just returned in Google? But again, it's that same element of, we don't need a lot of content, a lot of quality content, ensuring that we have broad, accurate kind of topic coverage, but obviously ensuring that it's up to date, it's factual, and it's aligned with the broader entity or the broader principle of what we are speaking about online. So it is about having that deep coverage without it being kind of random or off topic, and just keeping content really arrow focused and sharp based on the domain or the commercial matter at hand.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. That does bring us to the end of our conversation today. A huge thank you again to our panelists for sharing their insights on how AI is reshaping SEO and what it means for the future of search. It is very clear that we are in the midst of a major shift, one that presents both challenges, but also, I think everybody is really saying this here, is opportunities for brands, content creators, and marketers alike to really succeed in this new world. That conversation, however, does not stop here. AI's impact on search is evolving rapidly, and staying ahead means continuing to learn, adapt, and share insights as the landscape changes. If you want to dive deeper into this subject, we encourage you to follow WP Engine on social media, where we'll be sharing our discussions, insights, and strategies to help you navigate these changes. Thank you again to our panelists, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. Let's keep this conversation going.